All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Once again, I have an honored guest, and we're going to talk about some interesting things today. Let me make sure this is broadcasting to my YouTube channel. And if you are watching from Dr. L's channel, hello and welcome. Okay, there's Carl Anthony Towns and a commercial there. Let me get rid of that. All right. So I have Dr. L backstage. We were just chatting, and this is broadcasting on my platform and now his. So I'm not going to waste time. That is the most valuable resource, and I'm going to play my intro. For those of you who don't know, I interviewed a gentleman named Curtis Schoon about a year or so ago, and he said something very profound that I thought was worth reiterating over and over and over again, and that's that there are no political solutions to cultural deficiencies. So after the intro, I'm going to say a few words, and then I'm going to bring up Dr. L, and we're going to talk about college degrees and what's going on with the Black community. And I think that in addition to talking about what's going on with the Black community, I think we're going to talk about what's happening with and in society at large. So I'll see you on the other side. Please smash that like button. Also, consider subscribing to the channel if you are not subscribed. So, where did this topic come from? So, I'm going to admit that because of where I come from, see, in this world, we're all living in different worlds, and not everybody is privy to the same information.
That we will rush to finish things that are important so we can do things that are not. And I believe it's an immaturity there. People just don't understand that, life isn't about having fun all the time. You have to have fun sometimes. I agree. But as an adult, there's time where you have to just say, okay, listen, I got to get down to work right now. And I don't think enough of us value that time or really understand the fruits of that labor. Somehow we think things are just going to be without that kind of effort. And culturally, there's a deficiency there. That's why I always say that there's no political solution for cultural deficiencies.
So, where did this topic come from? So, I'm going to admit that because of where I come from, see, in this world, we're all living in different worlds, and not everybody is privy to the same information. All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Big Discussions 76. For those of you who don't know me, I suspect many of you watching right now don't. My name is Dr. Anwar Yusuf Dunbar. I am a YouTube content creator. I am a scientist, a writer, and a blogger and an author. I was thinking of how to start this stream, and I think that a good way would be to say that Thanksgiving is coming up, the holidays are coming up, and that means spending time with family and having interesting, fun, but also sometimes uncomfortable conversations about what's happening in our families, conversations about what's happening in the world, and conversations about how things have changed between the generations, and a lot of things have changed. So today I have Dr. L, and on this channel, I like to talk about current events and what's happening in the world, what's happening in our community. And not only do I like to write, but I also like to interview other interesting people who are asking some of the same questions and who are subject matter experts in their own areas. So as I described, I wrote a book. I will talk about this more at the end of the stream. I don't want to belabor this monologue, but this is my book, The Engineers of Western New York Basketball Story, Part One, Innocent Basketball Dreams. It's a story about learning the great game of basketball in my home city of Buffalo, New York. But this is also a manhood journey. And a lot of people are curious and interested and confused right now about what's happening with manhood and gender and relationships in general. And these are things that, as I've watched um, Dr. That question in the chat just threw me off. These are things that Dr. L talks about. So, uh, uh, you know, part of my brand is writing now, writing, interviewing people, and I thought it would be cool just to highlight some books that are in my library and I think we're going to touch upon a bit of all of this. So uh, these are books that I've read recently. I'm going to sprint through these that I think this conversation is going to touch every part of these books. This is Just a Kid from Arbor Hill by Tyrell Hughes. His wheelhouse is overcoming adversities. Um, Even when you don't have the adversities of life and coming from households where you don't have everything that you need. Crimson Cure, Reclaiming the Black Feminine. Okay, I'm looking to interview her as well. This talks about specifically what's happening with Black women and how to salvage um, the sisters, the young Black women. Beyond Death in Jail, I just had Dr. Ronald Neal here about 2 to 3 weeks ago. Dr. Tiosan Johnson, Solutions for Anti-Black Misandry, Flat Blackness and Black Male Death. I've had Dr. Johnson here on my channel. I want to have him back. But going more general, years ago, I read No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. Dr. L talks a lot about being your best self and those kinds of things. Men without work. Okay, there's a concern now that men are falling out of the workforce. Okay, and they are intentionally falling out of the workforce. The question is why. These are all things that people are asking about in society right now, and a major percentage of those unworking men are Black, just like us. So what's happening to Black boys and men? The anxious generation. What happened to young people post 2012? And then in terms of technology and just general socialization. And then this one is by a gentleman named Aaron Clarey, A World Without Men. Okay. That's in my library. It was a fascinating discussion. Again, these are all things that people are scratching their heads about. What's happening with men? What's happening with society? Why are men, the men that are struggling, why are they struggling? Why are they falling out of society in general? And what are the ramifications for all of these things? But with that, let me bring up Dr. L, and we're going to talk about a myriad of topics. Everybody, let's welcome Dr. L. Dr. L, welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for welcoming. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming to my channel and talking about your content and your experiences.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. I'm always humbled when somebody wants to talk to me. So
Okay. And I've noticed you're very motivated to talk to others as well. So you actively seek out other content creators and SMEs yourself. So yeah. Well, I imagine mostly everybody in the chat knows who you are, but for those who don't know, I'm going to share this with my family. Who is Dr. L? Talk a little bit about your background to the extent that you feel comfortable.
Well, once again, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I do try to have on a lot of different individuals. I reach out to a lot of people, and and a lot of times I've been blocked by some people just for asking them to come on the show, which is quite entertaining.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, some people who are very much in a feminist space, and so I want to have conversations with them, and they put out content, so I want to interact with them, and I don't plan to do it in a negative or hostile way. anyone who's seen my interviews knows that that's not who I am. But anyway, we can talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, so I am Dr. L. I am a retired police captain from Connecticut. I did 24 years in a police department here in Connecticut in the city of Waterbury. Fun fact, that's where, if anybody watches Kendra G, that's the same city. I didn't know that she grew up here as well. I retired after 24 years. I retired in good standing. I went back to school while I was in the police department and got my bachelor's in psychology, master's degree in forensic psychology. And then when I retired and the pandemic hit, I went back to school and completed a PhD in leadership with a concentration in criminal justice. I am very much concerned about what's going on with Black men. It was a concern of mine when I was going through my formal education. So I wanted to look into and understand, what was going on with Black men in particular, and figure out, what I can do to be a part of the solution rather than a part of the problem. I am a twice divorced guy, which I don't take that with I'm very humbled by that, and I wish that it wasn't the case. And some things I had to figure out about our culture and about myself and about my upbringing, which kind of brought me to the space and kind of had me asking questions about, okay, what went wrong and how come family formation is such a problem for us. So I had to, do some self-examination for myself. I am a father, raised my kids. They were with me my whole life. Sometimes they're still with me. They show up sometimes from here from time to time, but I enjoy that. It lets me know I did something right. And I'll be glad when they make me a grandfather. So that's just a little bit about me. If there's anything else, I'll be glad to answer it. So.
Okay, I want to respond to 2 comments here because this one threw me off when I was giving my monologue. October 3074 says, "Is it cold in his house?" I think this person's referring to my scarf. It's fall. I like to accessorize in the fall, and this is part of my brand. So I did meet Kevin Samuels before he passed away, and so that helped give me an appreciation for personal brand and style. So that's the scarf. It's actually a windy day here in the DMV. And then I want to salute Complex Design. We've rubbed elbows before in the YouTube streets. And speaking of which, that story you just told about being blocked because you wanted to interview individuals who I think they perceived that you guys might have conflicting points of view. We're going to come back to that. YouTubing is for those who don't know, YouTubing is a fierce business. It looks like all fun and games, but it can be a little bit chippy. So it's not for the faint-hearted.
That's true. That's definitely true. Yeah,
that's definitely true. So we're going to come back to this, but credentials are critical now more than ever, particularly in the YouTube streets. Who really is a doctor, who isn't, who's an actual licensed therapist, who isn't, and what they are a doctor or a therapist or a subject matter expert in. I asked Jeff St. James this as well. What is your background and expertise in?
Sure. So mine is, I guess mine is a little bit complex because I talk about, again, I was a police officer and I retired to the rank of captain. So I was part of our command staff. So that's where I get the leadership from. I was a Black man in the police department, having to tell other men what to do. And so you got to have a certain amount of gumption behind you in order to accomplish that. So again, I'm trying to figure out what's going on in the Black community. Of course, I'm a Black man in the police department, and I wanted to understand, again, what was going on. So that's my real background. Again, I have a degree in forensic psychology, and I have a degree in leadership with a concentration in criminal justice. So that is the essentials of my background, my education. Again, I've lived a life. It wasn't just like I was, just got a degree in leadership just to do something. But I was actually in leadership for 19 years. Of my 24 years, I was a supervisor, and it was extremely uncomfortable. I went through a lot of changes, a lot of growing up, being in the police department, number one, and being the son of a single mother. So there was a lot of things that I missed that I needed to attach to or need to learn in my time in the police department. And then when I became a supervisor, it was even more difficult for me. So there was a lot of things I had to figure out. So again, part of my journey was figuring out who I was, how do I maximize that, and how do I prepare other men to walk in the same path, or at least walk in their path with enough confidence, education, understanding, in order to accomplish whatever it is that they want to accomplish.
Okay, so let's stay on law enforcement momentarily. I had Dr. Ronald Neal on a couple of weeks ago. He
Mhm.
described in his book here, Beyond Death in Jail, 2010 to 2020 as the quote unquote decade of death. So I imagine you were on the force at least during some of that time. What I mean, we could spend a whole show on this, but what were some of your major learning experiences being in law enforcement? What were some of the eye-opening things as a Black man that you saw? Or you know, you and I grew up hearing about police brutality. We saw George Floyd, we saw Rodney King, and we're always seeing run-ins between Black people and the police. But what did you see when you were there?
It's a good question. I'm asked that often, and what I saw was really the difference between white and Black communities and how we grew up. I was in the police academy during O.J. Simpson. That was in 1995, and there were two of us in our class of about 30, 35 or so in the academy. Now there's a class that goes through at one time, then 3 months later there's another class that comes through. So our cohort was about 30, 35. And again, there was two of us. And when the O.J. Simpson verdict was read, we looked at each other like, yeah, okay. But everybody else was like, oh, this is crazy. This is bull. They start throwing stuff. It was like, wow, wow, really? This is how y'all getting down, right? So just a whole that was a big introduction to the world that I was walking into. So from my time there, I saw how people would say little things here and there about different environments, communities, people, these people, this, that, and the other, comments like that. I saw that amongst the officers that I dealt with. I saw that amongst the people that I was going to help police. Just a lot of the comments about what they thought about African American people, about what they thought about men, what they thought about our community, things along those lines. So I hope if I need to be more specific, I can, but I certainly just saw that there was a dichotomy about how we grew up, the way we saw the world. And again, I wanted to help to understand, why we have this difference of opinion. Where's this coming from? And how can we, number one, come together if we can? And number two, what do we need to do as a Black community in order to improve ourselves? It's not so much the gaze of other people that I was so much concerned about. What I was really concerned about is us. How do we look at ourselves? What are our education rates? What are our graduation rates? What are our violence rates? What are our homicide rates, et cetera? So I wanted to understand that and really try to come up with some opinions about what we can do or should do about it in order to fix the community.
Okay, which I'm assuming you were in a metro area and not a rural area. Which market were you in?
Yeah, so I was in Waterbury, Connecticut, which is about an hour and a half from New York and 2 hours from Boston. So it's in that corridor. They call us sometimes a suburb of New York. I don't know about that, but we had all the inner city problems. Drugs, prostitution, gambling, violence, shootings, things along those lines. We were hit hard by the crack epidemic. I got to be honest, I started Dr. Neal's book. I have not finished it yet, so I don't know the full extent of what he was saying, but I can remember in the city that I grew up in, from 1992 until I came on the police department in 1995, it was horrendous time. And I wasn't a police officer at that time. I became a police officer in 95. And so I remember all the shootings, all the gang wars that were going on in my city and in Hartford, Connecticut, and New Haven, Connecticut, and in Bridgeport. If anybody looks up, Connecticut stats at that particular time, I think at one time Bridgeport was the murder capital of the United States per capita, because that's how many murders were going on. And then at one time, New Haven, Connecticut was rated one of the worst cities to live in. And that's where Yale is. So Connecticut has its issues. So it was a city urban environment, and we were dealing with everything that everyone else was dealing with as far as the crack epidemic, gangs, gang warfare. We had a very industrialized city years ago. And in fact, Waterbury is called the Brass City because it was so important, because we produced so much brass that was used for ammunition and for bullets and and for buttons on soldiers' uniforms and for various other things. And so when that industry closed down, again, where did you talk about the book there? What Men Without Work? What happens to men when they don't have work? And that's what happened to Waterbury. We just became this one time it's booming metropolitan city, if you will, and the next thing you know, it's a closed down, kind of like the Rust Belt of the Northeast. So it was kind of traumatic. And so that's what we were dealing with as police officers. How do we combat people who don't have jobs and turn to other nefarious methods and means in order to feed their families?
Yeah, yeah, that deindustrialization piece was huge. I don't think a lot of people, in this country, we've been conditioned to have a red team, blue team mentality politically, but I don't think people really think about, okay, these jobs went away, these whole industries went away from many of our urban centers. What were the after effects for the people left behind, and what is the upside for potentially, if you can, bringing some of that back. But that's a different story. Yeah, from my childhood, the one rap track that stands out in my mind, well, two, Black Cop by KRS-One, and also The Sound of the Police by KRS-One, and then NWA's one of their signature tracks. So for most of my childhood, there was uh, at least in the media and in our communities, a distrust of law enforcement. But there were and there are good cops. Is that a career you would recommend today?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I would. I had a good time. Now, it's not for everyone. I mean, it's certainly not for everyone. You see a lot of things. A lot of times I knew officers who couldn't take it anymore, who, because of the trauma that we were dealing with, again, we were inner city. So we saw, shootings. We saw, uh, um, you know, uh, the, we investigated molestations. We investigated everything that people can imagine. If anyone watches, Law and Order or Law and Order SVU and all that, we were dealing with that on a day-to-day basis, and so it was very traumatic for certain people. So if you're not cut out for it, don't enter it. But anyone who thinks about it, I certainly would never talk anyone out of it. Um, you talk about NWA, and of course, I still like '90s hip hop. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. I still like '90s hip hop, so that's what I listen to, and so I listen to NWA. And F the Police and all that. So I
Yeah,
can't tell you, when I came on in '95, not too when did F the Police come out? 88, 9, 90, something like that.
that was
And
88, 89. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then so we would go into bars and clubs, right? And so this is my community. Number one, I grew up there, and number two, I became a police officer there. So I walk into clubs and stuff, right? It's too loud. There was violence going on. There was a fight going on, or something like that. And then they here comes that track, and then the DJ's putting that on, and of course it was up to me. Okay, you're the young rookie. You got to go tell this DJ to shut it off. Okay. So that was part of what I had to do, but I didn't really take it personal. I knew what it was. Again, I grew up like many other folks, having an understanding about the dissension between the police and the community, and I understood what it was. I mean, my uncles and my people in my church and my friends, and we all talked about the cops of this and cops of that. Okay, yeah. All right. And I'm not going to say none of it is true, but certainly we got to get into these environments in order to root it out, in order to stop it. So if you're not going to join them, and this is a point of contention, but if you're not going to join the police department or join the military, then how can you ever root it out? How can you ever be part of the solution of it, if you're just going to bow out? Because next thing you know, it's going to be filled with the very type of people who you don't want to be there. So, I mean, that's just one perspective. I can certainly appreciate those who say I don't want anything to do with it. Okay, well, I can appreciate that. Continue to fight the good fight on the outside. But for those of us who are fighting from the inside, have a little bit of grace and compassion and respect for those who have said, I'm going to don the badge, I'm going to don the uniform, and try to make my community a better place and show people a better way. And that was certainly the way that I went about it.
Okay. We're going to move off law enforcement, but I was thinking BGS had more said something, I think, which you alluded to, which was that there are things that cops see, law enforcement, that they see that they can't unsee after they see it. So they see the darker sides of human nature. And one of the criticisms when you hear law enforcement talk about how stressful the job is and how, every day going out might be your last, or you just never know. One of the retorts from the public is, well, you signed up for that job, so you should know. You signed up for that, so you should know what all comes with it, and you should be willing to take the risks. Without your own mental health or your own having your own reactions to the violence and the dangers that you experience as a law enforcement officer. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard him when he said that. I was definitely in the chat when he said it. He was absolutely right. There's some things you see that you can't unsee. Again, I saw the worst of the worst. People torturing their own children, other people's children, torturing animals. Not taking care of the elderly. The violence that they have towards one another. Just some images are certainly burned into my head. But you got to sit there or stand there or investigate it and ask questions and dig into it and search around. So there is an aspect to that. It's certainly not for everyone. There was something else that you said I wanted to comment on.
One of the criticisms from the general public is when law enforcement officers talk about the trauma that they see and the dangers they experience. One of the responses is, well, you signed up for that career. You should be willing to, you knew what you signed up for when you signed up for that career.
Yeah. So to that point, I certainly advocate for officers to get the mental health. I think that's something that we should push for all of our officers to go through that, to destigmatize mental health for all people, men in particular, but for police officers, it should be kind of mandatory for every 2 to 3 years to at least have a sit down and chat and see where their heads are at, because some people are not able to handle the way that the world works and to see the things that you've never seen before. So that certainly is that. Concerning the dangers, if you look up, the most dangerous jobs, I think like being a police officer is like number 24. It's not even in the top 20.
Really?
So yeah, it's not. I mean, lumberjacks and fishermen, deep sea fishermen and all that. Their jobs are vastly more. Even construction workers are vastly more dangerous than being a police officer. So a lot of people don't realize that, and particularly when it comes to losing one's life. So if that's a concern, it doesn't even rank in the top 20. Last time I checked, it was like number 24. So
okay. I want to thank Don Man for the $10 super sticker here. You answered the other question I was going to ask, which is whether or not law enforcement officers go for therapy themselves, and it sounds like they do. So I've held you there.
It varies. Well, the last point about this, I think it's important because a lot of people don't know and understand. I do have a second channel. I need to get more into that. Now that I got my office all set up, I'll try to get more into that. Police departments, there are 18,000 police departments in the United States. 50 states guide them. And so what one city does, for example, if you're down in the DMV area, if you're, what Washington, D.C. Metro Police Department does, they may not do in a couple of states over in Memphis, Tennessee. So if DC, I don't know this for sure, I'm just throwing this out there. If DC mandates for their officers to go through training, through psychological evaluation every 2 to 3 years, Memphis may not, and Nashville may require that, and Miami may not, and Orlando may. So it's a sad case when it comes to law enforcement in the United States. It needs to be more standardized, more professionalized. As far as, well, let me just say what needs to be more standardized. What one cop does in Buffalo, New York, should be almost be the same thing that someone does in San Diego and then in Oklahoma, and it's just not. And that is a huge problem within law enforcement.
Okay. Now you touched upon this before we got on law enforcement, but
Mhm.
what in general, what was your purpose for coming to YouTube, and what are your core messages? What are you looking to spread to the masses or to a specific
Yeah.
topic?
So I wanted to come to YouTube because I wanted to discuss what was going on within our community. I recognized that I was um, a unfortunately an anomaly. Um, was fairly well doing okay, in my profession. I was a guy who was raising his children, and I wanted to kind of give back the best way that I could. One of the ways, I'm not going to go back down the police road again, but I started coaching when I was in the police department. We had a police activity league, and for 10 years, I coached numerous sports all year round, from football to basketball to baseball to softball to all that. So I wanted to be that black male that was seen and in my community and in my environment as being part of the solution rather than part of the problem. So I wanted to bring that same message over to YouTube. Again, I grew up without a father. I grew up, very self-conscious about a lot of things, very unsure of myself, and so I did a lot of work mentally to work on myself. I read books. I went back to school. I just did a lot of inner monologues, dialogues, and just ask myself, how can I get better? How can I improve? How can I be somebody better? How can I stand up for myself? How can I stand on my square? How can I be more confident, more assertive, not get taken advantage of? Things along those lines. And I know that if I'm struggling with that, I assume that others are struggling with that as well. And so I wanted to be a resource to say, hey, listen, if I can do it, you can do it. I did it without a father. I did it because I looked up to other people. And if I can be a quote unquote uncle to someone or a mentor to someone who I never ever meet, but they can just listen to my message, then I'll be that person. I also want to kind of leave a legacy for my kids and for my grandkids if I ever meet them or not, because I want to, who was their father, who was their patriarch, who was this man who helped to bring us into the world. So I want to leave a legacy for them so they can always reach back and say this was my dad or grandfather or great grandfather, etc. So
Okay. Patriarch, that's a word that could get us into hot trouble today. That's why I say big trouble.
yeah.
So see, so I appreciate the fact that you're pretty transparent and honest about your life. You mentioned that you didn't know your father. Did your parents just not marry, or what did he die doing his job, or if you feel like sharing,
Yeah.
you don't have to.
Well, no, I will. I mean,
Okay.
so I think it was kind of a hit and run kind of thing, in all honesty.
Okay.
So again, I have a deep sense of wanting to correct that for the next generation.
Okay.
The reason I wanted to be around for my kids is because I didn't have anyone around for me, and for whatever his reasons were, I just thought that wasn't the way to get down. And I have a deep sense of sympathy. I've talked about this in a fairly recent video that I did about why I'm doing about this, why I'm doing these type of shows, and because when I look at young kids who are walking around stores, in particular, but anywhere, young boys walking around with their mothers, that was me. And I know that if people don't reach back through coaching, mentoring programs, community activism, through community centers, through day camps, so if there's no males to reach back, then that's a problem. And that was me. And so somebody reached back, the people in my church, uncles. I was in day camps. I was at the boys club. So there was young black men who were there to help me, to guide me along the way. And some of it, sometimes they just stood around and watched us fight, particularly at the boys club. Y'all hash it out, y'all duke it out. Okay. It was a rite of passage is the manhood that I needed. And I know other boys need it too. That's why I do what I do.
Okay. You just mentioned another flashpoint, which is another theme of my book, and that's reaching back, because you know that today we have a segment of men who, Black men in particular, who feel like, well, those aren't my children. Why should I invest in children that aren't mine? And then you have
At them kids.
another cohort like yourself would say, okay, well, we have a responsibility to try to help make this right, because yeah, once bloodlines and once it seems to me once those get broken, if nobody fixes them, they're gonna keep staying broken. They're just gonna keep going, and the dysfunction and the trauma and the toxicity will keep going unless someone steps in to try to do something about it. So I applaud you for that. I did. Go ahead.
I just want to chime in about that. So there was a situation, when I was back in the police department. This is my frame of reference for a lot of things. But I was in the police department, and my son was in high school. He was like a junior or senior, and a friend of his, a couple of friends, I think it was like 3 or 4 of them. So it was like 4 of them in a car. So they're doing what young teenage boys do, and they go out to have a good time. And so they stop by a house party. So the police get called to the house party, and I'm still on the job at this particular point. And they get to the house party. Police get there. They start, polling IDs and see my son's name. My son is the same name that I do. And they're like, oh, oh, okay. Well, you guys get in the car and just take off. So my son pulls up to the house. And he's like, Dad, this happened, this, that, and the other. Why? And he's telling me the story about how the cops treated them before they knew who he was. And so I went outside. It was a cold day. I had to put on a jacket, go outside, talk to these boys. And so I start telling them about, how to interact with the police and, what happens. And this is the world we live in. And, this is before Trump. And this is before January 6th. January 6th, before Charlottesville. So these boys had kind of grown up in a world where racism wasn't a big thing, or at least it wasn't talked about. And so when I start telling them this, they were like, wow, okay, wow. And so I went in the house, and then the next day my son's like, listen, Dad, these guys, we really thank you for going out there and talking to them, because they didn't understand this. And I had an aha moment, like, wow, right? Nobody's talking to our boys about how to interact with the police, or how to conduct themselves in motor vehicle stops, or just other life experiences. So again, that's why I do what I do. And that's why I'm reaching back, because someone has to tell these boys how to be men. And if they're not getting it because the women are in leading the homes, or because the women are wanting to have kids and not wanting to partner up, or all the other things that we talk about in this particular space. But these boys need someone. If we want to have good, strong men in our communities to protect us, to build things, to move up, then somebody has to create those boys. And again, somebody has to reach back. So I just want to talk about that story.
Okay. That kind of dovetails into what I was going to mention next. This woman has a unique name, Yoli. I saw her name come up when I was watching one of your streams last night. She says good afternoon to Dr. L and the chat. Okay, you just mentioned something interesting. These boys need men. In your stream I was watching with Troy and Trey, you mentioned so that gets to, and this is an uncomfortable talking point, but it also gets to what the women are choosing, and if they're even choosing fathers for their children and their sons in particular. You've encountered a channel that I've encountered called Virtuous Woman 1969. And whoever that is, now we don't know, you mentioned this yourself, we don't know if that's AI. It sounds like whoever that is using AI to record it, because that doesn't sound like a human voice. But whoever is making that, that's an important message, because the question has to be asked, what are the women choosing? what's happening on the woman's side, and that's an important question. Um, do you feel that the same way about that channel? I mean, aside from the fact that it sounds
Yeah,
like AI.
I'm disappointed in. I don't like AI. I don't like when people just kind of just, here's what I think that she's doing, and just putting something into AI and, pump me out a 20-minute script and then read from it, and then, interact for that. I don't appreciate that. I try to do things from the heart. I don't script things, but that's just the way that I rock. Now, is her
Yeah,
information good? Yeah,
yeah.
it's good. The one or two videos, actually maybe 3 or 4 videos that I watched have been pretty good. And I did reach out. I sent an email again, and there was no response. So it just lets me know that there's something fishy going on with that. So I would just take that with a grain of salt. This is just my own opinion. I would just take it with a grain of salt. And this is not a gig. Although I do appreciate I do appreciate the cash apps and the some subs and all that kind of stuff, and it makes the channel go and grow. But there really is a passion behind me, and so when people don't, I understand people don't want to show their face and don't want to get doxxed and all this kind of stuff. I
Hmm.
understand. I do appreciate that. But to me, there's a personal touch to it, and I think that AI and computer generated stuff is just going too far. But that's just my opinion. So,
Okay, we are seeing a lot of that today. Before we move on, are there any? Well, before we talk about the other guests that you have, I uh, I think one of the first streams that I saw of you was with the kosher clinician, and
mm.
you guys really had some very candid conversations about your marriages and your children and your experiences in that regard. So I appreciate your transparency there. One of the flashpoints today, one of the flashpoint topics is marriage. Would you recommend that today?
Oh, that's a good question. Man, I talk to my
I know
son
that
about this
that's
all
a whole
the
can of worms.
time. I know, man. I know. Listen. I'm probably going to be, I'm going to take the track that I think a lot of other guys would say is like I probably would recommend it for my daughter, but not for my
Hmm.
son. Um, and I've had conversations again with Kosher Clinician. We had a great time, and the lead attorney came on talking about prenups and all that. I'm just not convinced. I'm just not convinced. I just think that I just don't want the state involved. Now, do I want a health? Do I want and do I think that people should be involved in a monogamous, healthy relationship? Yes. I just think that there's something that happens within Western marriages that is problematic for men in particular. And one of the biggest things is why I want to interact with a lot of ladies is because I want them to acknowledge that there's a big change that has happened. The ladies that we are encountering in 2025, soon to be 2026, is not the same that our grandparents encountered in 1946. And the things that those ladies were accommodating, the things they were willing to do, the things that they knew how to do, these ladies take pride in not knowing it. I've met several ladies who I don't cook. I don't clean. Nah, I don't do none of that. And look at you with a bit of disdain when they say it, like as if cooking to eat is some type of problem. But if a guy says, "Well, I don't take the trash out. I don't cut the grass. I don't change oil. I don't do none of that." That's exactly the way that I hear those types of statements. So, what I recommended, I think people should do their homework, do a long vetting process, meet families, have serious conversations. And if you're intent in doing that for whatever your own personal values are or religious reasons, then certainly get a prenup. That would be my recommendation.
Okay. I just want to add that what you described, and I tell my mother every time I go home, there aren't many women left like you, mom. And she just kind of looks at me. But
Yeah.
that's something I think that started becoming undone. For me, I first experienced it in the early 1990s. My first girlfriend, she was lamenting cooking and having to cook and learning to cook. Why can't the man cook? So a lot of these things were we're looking at the end results now, but a lot of these things were slowly undone for us starting in the 80s and the 90s. And I think the boomer generation, maybe the black boomers, maybe they didn't realize what was happening. Some of them supported it, but clearly much of that was being undone at that time. Now,
And
kosher. Go ahead.
I don't have a problem with if your woman works just as much as you do, 40 hours a week. Split the cooking. Split the, she cooks, I clean up. I cook, she cleans up. I mean, particularly if you got kids, right? Work that stuff out. But again, I'm running into ladies who are not interested in that. I don't know how to cook. Well, wait a minute, don't you? How are you gonna feed these kids? I mean, and I'm in my 50s. I mean, so I can't imagine, what's going on out here. And I just wouldn't deal with that type of thing. Again, I can see you're right about this unraveling, but there's been this unraveling that has been countered with or supplemented with this idea of just disdain and disgust for any woman who does things that women traditionally did. Not saying you have to do it 100% of the time, but you don't know how to do that at all. You're not comforting at all. And it's weird because I've run into ladies, right? I hire a housekeeper because I just need somebody to help me do that. So, but I run into ladies who if something's out of place in my house, for example, now let me just say this from the male perspective. This is what men are, this is what I think a lot of men are running into. If I'm at your house, right, and maybe there's, I was at this lady's house one time and her blinds were off. I'm like, what's up with your blinds? So I went over there and I adjusted them and made sure that they were working. And it's like, oh, they were like that forever. Okay, I went over there and took care of something that I think that a man should be able to do, that I think that a man should be able to do. Now, converse that with, sometimes I wash my clothes because I live alone, wash my clothes, and then it'll be sitting in the basket. I've had ladies come over and just look at it. I mean, so if it's okay for me to hang blinds, adjust things, make sure that your lights are working, change bulbs, simple stuff. Take a look at your garbage disposal. Take a look at, look at your soil, your toilet is backed up. Help you do. And I've done these types of things when I'm just seeing a young lady, and it's taboo to fold a man's clothes. That's just weird to me. It's weird. It's weird, and it's not something that I would sign up for in this stage of my life. It's not something I would sign up for. And this is the difference that I think that men or women, because men I think are willing to do those types of things. Women are like, oh, you live alone. That's wife stuff. I don't fold clothes because that's wife stuff.
Well, okay. Yeah. I think in general there's a very just fuzzy blueprint about how we're supposed to, interact if you're going over someone's house and it's not your house. Should you take their garbage out? Is it your job to go right in the refrigerator to see if they have food? Is it if it's someone else's home and they're a grown functioning adult, I think that's in this construct we're living in, some of these things have become very fuzzy.
Yeah, I guess that's the truth. But to me, I look at it as if I'm at your house, I've been invited there. I mean, to me, your home is a sacred place, right? It's I don't just invite anybody to my house. Yeah, I don't invite anyone to my house. So it's a sacred place, and I want you to feel comfortable there. And if I am comfortable enough to adjust blinds and do this and do the manly things, and nobody ever stops, oh no. They want you to take on that presence, and when it's not reciprocated, I feel a certain type of way. I mean, and so you want to prove yourself to be a wife, or you want to be a wife. Let me say it like this: you want to be a wife, but you haven't demonstrated you can do wifely things. And so that's just not a dynamic that I can get. And so, is there a dynamic of, do I go around touching people's stuff? Well, now what to me, from a masculine thought process, if I don't take your trash out, how are you going to look at me? If I don't do this, how are you going to look at me? And again, I'm talking about long-term relationships. I'm not talking about, one night stands and all that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
I'm routinely coming to your house. I'm routine, and if I like a certain type of drink, let's just say I like Coca-Cola, and every time I come to your house, I drink up all your Cokes. Every time I come to your house, I'm bringing a can of a box or whatever, 12 pack of Coke. That's the way that I think, and that's just the way that's if I'm meeting with a woman who doesn't think along those lines, right? If you every time you come to my house, let's just say this, every time you come to my house, you wash your clothes, you spend the night, you wash your clothes, and you never ever bring laundry detergent, or you never fold my clothes. I mean, this is what we're running into, and I agree with you that it's fuzzy, but it shouldn't be this fuzzy. I don't think it should be this fuzzy. And the problem is that it's fuzzy. Well, do I do this or do I not do this? Do I show myself as being a man? Do I add somebody? I think Landon put in there. Do I add coolant in your car? Do I check your oil? Do I take it to get gassed up? Because these are things that women would gladly accept. But if a man is asking for these types of things, fold my clothes, you see a couple dishes in my sink, wash them, help me cook something, make me a sandwich. Oh, geez. Oh, it's not the 1920s anymore. What's wrong with you? And you want guys, this goes into the question about would I recommend marriage? I can't recommend a guy sign up for that. I can't recommend a guy sign up for that. I would recommend that he do the vetting and get what he's looking for in a relationship. Now, it's true that the younger generations might be looking for something. Y'all figure that out. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it.
Okay. All right. Let's go a little macro here. You recently did a live stream on this is everybody. This is going more society wide. You did a live stream on the feminization of society, the cluster B diagnoses, and the histrionics, quote unquote, as it relates to women. What got you interested in these areas? It is it the thought process that something has gone awry with the other side of the gender line, or that they're indoctrinating uh, certain things at the university level? What got you interested in making that particular stream?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm interested in that because I like all things psychology. Again, my that's my bachelor's, and my master's is in forensic psychology. And sometimes we have to study female nature and behavior. And so sometimes we have to take a look at, in particular, for anyone who doesn't know, forensic psychology is how law enforcement or the courts intertwine with psychology, right? So we look at different neurological disorders, like why do people commit crimes, what keeps them out of prisons, upbringing, backgrounds, all that type of thing. And so it just kind of falls into my own levels of curiosity. So taking a look at these different personality disorders, and there's been a grand acknowledgement that these things have spiked within the last 20, 30 years. And why have they spiked? And coincidentally, this is a correlation, not a causation, right? It's a correlation that marriages have gone down, people are less dissatisfied, women are more heavily into the workforce, and yet they're suffering more, more anxious, more depressed, taking medications for it, seeking out therapy. And so just take a look at this, and I just want to take a look at it. And again, while I teach this, when I hear someone with a little bit more education than myself, a psychiatrist, talking about this when she's interviewing people, it just perks my ears up. And again, that particular video was sent to me. And then again, the Better Love Movement sent it to me. I'm like, and she was like, "You're gonna love this." And I wrote back to her, "You're absolutely right, I do." And I ran home that night. I finished painting up my stuff, and I jumped on and said, "I got to talk about this because this is a problem." And what's interesting to me, and Dr. Tia Johnson talked about this the other day, the canaries in the coal mine. A lot of these things that these ladies are ladies in current environment, the dominant society, are dealing with, are things that Black people have been dealing with for a long time. When we often have talked about, this is going to be unpopular, but we have often talked about the negative attitudes of some of our Black women. Just is what it is. But I would say that has been a crashing out. they have been crashing out because of the lack of masculine presence, the lack of being partnered up. And so that has been their crashing out. Now we're seeing more quote unquote white women doing it as well. And now they're going to talk about it. They're going to talk about them acting up at airports and acting like toddlers and acting like children. And what has been the common denominator? There's not a lot of male presence, working harder, staying, not having children. All of these different types of dynamics that made the human race what it is are now being thrown out the window. And we have to take a look at how that is affecting all of us naturally. And conversely, we've often talked about how men are responding to that as well. When men don't have children, when men don't have families, they also crash out, right? They're also more prone to conspiracy theories. They're more prone to acts of violence, joining gangs, terrorist groups, white supremacist groups, right? So what calms them all? What calms all these individuals down? It's having families. And so when you take a look at that and understand that family formation is important, it helps to mature us, it helps to calm us down, then we can move in a different direction. But we both have casted that aside. And now look, the dominant society is dealing with their job losses, right? Their jobs have been moved overseas. Their farms are going under and things along those lines. And now a lot more of them are doing what? They're joining white supremacist groups, right? They're joining the Trump MAGA cult. So we have to take a look at this and understand, these things all go together. And until we acknowledge that as professionals and say, here's a serious psychological problem, and here's what's happening to us in this modern day society, and what are we going to do about it?
Okay. Yeah, I think yeah, these things are now starting to be talked about because they're reverberating outward. The mainstream media hasn't done a good job covering these things. You mentioned Better Love Movement. Salute to Anita. She does very, very good work. I think this is a good segue to the next question. But before we go there, and I'm sure she has a lot to say about this herself. Going back to whether or not to get married, one of my mother's go-tos. She hasn't said it much recently, but find a girl in church. Have you ever heard that?
Oh yeah, I grew up in church. That was all we talked about.
Okay. Have you had any experiences with that? I know that it could get a little interesting in there too.
Yeah. So I grew up in church, and I married two. Well, one was a church girl, one was not. And so, she was a brand new church girl. To me, a church girl is a girl who grew up in church, who was, a toddler in church, right? So there's a difference. So I think that the church has done a terrible job with helping this transition that we're into. It has told us to go get a wife, and then everything will be okay. But there's too much going on out here between social media, between just the changing times, changing environments, the need for two incomes, dual incomes. There's just too much that is going on, and the church has not kept up in how we make that work on a practical, everyday level. Because I can't, it's one thing to just come in from working at the docks or working at the Ford plant, and then come home, and then your wife has something, a hot meal for you, and then says, and then brings you a drink, and you don't talk to her for the rest of the night, and then try to crawl on top of her at the end of the night. That certainly need to be corrected. But now we're dealing with two individuals who are some can be high powered, even if it's in their own mind, with a college education. So they are dealing with that. And so now they both come home after 40 hours of work. They're both tired. Who's going to cook? Who's going to take care of the kids? Right. So the church has not done a good job telling us how we make this thing work. And it's got to be more than prayer. It's got to be more than Jesus, more than Bible study, more than all that. There's practicalities, right? We got to figure out how to have an argument, how to just have a disagreement without it turning to a shouting match in which the kids are scared and your neighbors are calling the police on you. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and the church didn't keep up with that. And I think, if you watch Andrew Wilson's debate with Coach Greg Adams, that's what Andrew Wilson was alluding to, right? Someone to go to and talk to, this ecclesiastical type of thing. That's one thing I agree with him in that. We don't have a head, eldership, leadership, elders within our communities. And we don't, and therefore we have replaced that with therapy and therapists who we go to and pay $150 an hour for 45 minutes and for them to tell us about whatever. But we need real practical solutions about how we make this thing work, and the things that we've done right and the things that we've done wrong. And until we get to that particular place, we're going to continue to have these issues. So yeah, I was kind of a long-winded answer to, yeah, the church has let us down. And I grew up in the church, and I've seen it. And I remember being in church before I left. We would have myself, all of my cohort of friends, we were all in our early 20s, all had wives, and we were struggling with this. And we would ask our church leadership to have some conferences or do a talk, and they never did it. So in particular, the Black church really has let us down to a great degree, and they gotta acknowledge that. They gotta acknowledge that.
Okay. Thank you for that that testimony. Yeah, the other piece, Jeff mentioned in one of his recent offerings that you mentioned therapy is kind of taken the place of church. I think that's huge. But even the therapy field has also become highly feminized.
Mm.
Okay, so but going back, one of the things I started hearing about in my late teens was that the Black churches just hadn't stopped being friendly to men. So they stopped being male-friendly spaces, and became predominantly female spaces or female-centered spaces. Okay. All right. We mentioned Better Love Movement. Shout out to Anita. One of the unique aspects of your platform is that you regularly have female authors and content creators come for discussions, even if you disagree with them or they disagree with you. Talk about this approach and why you think it's important, even though it may result in disagreements and fallouts, such as the one with Dr. Chiako, which we're going to get to in a little bit.
Yeah. I want to have conversations with people because I want to have conversations with all people because I want to understand what their point of view is and where they're coming from. When they write things or when they say things, what lens are they coming from in analyzing? Because a lot of things that they say and see, I've never seen. And I've read about 3 or 4 Bell Hooks books, and I just don't see what she's talking about. I just don't see it. So I grew up, even though I was a product of a single mom. I mean, I grew up in church, and it was a very male, positive male. I don't want to say dominated, but the elders of the church were men. There were a lot of deacons, and so that was my environment. So I'm trying to understand, where are these, and they all had jobs. I lived in the inner city. And so these guys were living on the outskirts or in a nice suburb. So I'm like, I knew people. My uncle was one of the first Black folks to live in a town that is adjacent to Waterbury. So, and I had another uncle, he and his wife, my aunt, lived and were in another place. So I grew up seeing successful Black men. So a lot of this vitriol that is going on towards Black men in Black male spaces, I just don't understand. And when people try to write pieces or do YouTube content denigrating Black men in particular, I push back against that, and I want to see it. I want to know where you're coming from and where's the stats and data and statistics about this. And I've had about 4 doctors on that I can remember off the top of my head. All of them were very nice. 2 of them I still interact with. Gosh, I can't remember her name now. Chris Marsh was one. Diane Stewart was the other. Still email them. Great people. And they just don't have this negative aspect about men. And so if I think that we just need to have these conversations to try to get to the truth. And again, the manosphere, in particular, the Black manosphere, is coming at this on one angle. And it seems as if our women are coming at it from another angle, and they don't see what we see, or they're not reading the material that we are reading. And that is problematic for me because these people are sociologists and they're not reading a lot of this material. And if we're reading it, why aren't they reading it? And I remember this was a guy, I can't remember his name. He's got a big platform. BGS will know his name. Anyway, he's got a big platform, and one day I was watching one of his videos. I can't remember his name. That's going to bother me. And he was talking about people in the chat were saying, we don't even talk about the Moynihan report. That is huge in our sector, right? Because we talk about that, right? We talk about the Moynihan report. And at that time, I hadn't read the Moynihan report. Even though it's not something that's talked about. So in my formal education, we never talked about it. So I went back and I read it. And I'm reading this like, what's the problem with this? He was absolutely right. Patrick Moynihan was. So if it's not being talked about, and this was a male feminist who was saying that this is, we shouldn't be dealing with this, right? Men got to do better, this, that, and the other. Well, the truth of the matter is that we can acknowledge that men need to do better, black men need to do better, but we also need to have the chains taken off of us. And, so that's a whole nother conversation, but we're doing a lot better than what we are given credit for. And I want to have conversations with people who are willing to acknowledge that, or at least have a different frame of reference. And maybe we can come to some type of understanding about why we think along the way we think. Okay.
I want to ask you about your discussion with Dr. Marsh. You said you all communicate pretty regularly. But could you give the Cliff Notes version of when you guys had you did your Q&A with her? The reason I ask is because I know that one of her messages is it's okay to the way I interpreted it was it's okay to be alone and not married and not with anybody. And that's interesting to me because when I mentioned Thanksgiving, when I go home, my folks are, you need to be with somebody. You need to be with somebody. It's not good to be alone. It's not good to, man was not meant to be alone. But there's a movement that has materialized to say, well, no, you can be alone. It's okay. You don't have to be. You don't have to be with somebody. You could be alone and do what you want to do. Did you guys talk about that, or did you guys focus on something else?
No, it was definitely a core feature of her book, and it was something I did ask her about, and we disagreed about that particular part. But she was at least nice about it, and she did say that she wants not that she wants to be married, but she has no problem with marriage, and she was simply asking the question, why do we need to push this, and we're making people feel bad because they're not partnered up. I think that a lot of that is cope, in all honesty, because listen, there's a lot that has been done to the Black community. Let me say it like that. There's been a lot that has been done to the Black community. And I would, if someone would to read Chris Marsh's book, the name of it is escaping me, but you can go look it up, Chris with a K, Chris Marsh's book. And then I would suggest that they go read Diane Stewart's book. Those two books, particularly Diane Stewart's book, would really help to understand what happened to the Black community. At least two times in Diane Stewart's book, she acknowledges that Black men were subjected to horrendous treatment, denied access to jobs, etc., and that created the very situations that we're dealing with today. So once you've been denied access to jobs, education, etc., and then you give the women those benefits, give the women welfare, etc., then they start to develop an air of superiority. Now you couple that book with Chris Marsh's book about, okay, there's not enough middle class, and she had difficulty defining what middle class was. If there's not enough middle class men to go around, then what should the middle class women do? And that is to me, that's a legitimate question. As much as I don't like to hear Black women say, "Oh, listen, I need to start dating out. Y'all need to start dating out." Physically, there's not enough of us. There's 2 million more Black women, and we are, even though Black men are outpacing their women as far as collectively, as far as monetary goods, or at least money, you know, we had to take a look at that and understand, how do we get these people to come together? Because if the women are getting more education, but they're looking down on blue collar men, then we need to adjust their thinking along those lines. So again, this is why I want to have these conversations. So if I can say to Chris Marsh, or anyone who's reading Chris Marsh's work, or anybody else's work, and say, okay, it's true that you're getting more education, but why does education make you more viable for marriage? What about that does that? And I think you started, I can't remember, we were talking about this before we got on, or after, right? They developed this air of superiority, and there really shouldn't be that way. I don't see any reason why a doctor, a medical doctor, or a PhD, or whatever, can't date an electrician who's making $150,000, $160,000, $180,000 a year. What is it about that would make him less viable for marriage? And if we approach it from that particular perspective, then we might have more marriages to develop our communities. So that's why I want to have those conversations. That was the brunt of that was the basis of Chris Marsh's understanding that there's just not enough to go around. So stop feeling bad about it. But there probably are a lot more, but because the ladies have skyrocketed their demands and standards, then you think these guys don't qualify, and that just to me is going to continue to lead to the destruction of our communities.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to add something to that, which many in the audience might not see coming. Have you ever watched Finding Love? My algorithm sent me Finding Love Detroit this morning, so I watched the first episode, and I would throw into the mix that even amongst the college educated crowd, even there, if you're not a perfect match, if you don't dress adequately, if you don't drive, the right car, if you don't check off all the boxes, even within the professional crowd, you could still not be considered long-term husband material.
Yeah, I think that's problematic, because we have taken in this boule attitude more than anyone else, right? This talented tenth that we can't get away from, and I think that's problematic. And look what it's doing to our communities. Look what it's doing to our school systems. Look what it's doing to our churches. What good is that serving us? And certainly, I think that we could get more people in the middle class if we just partnered up. And everybody's not going to graduate from Harvard or Yale. We just don't graduate from there. So to overlook people because they don't have that, to me, is just dooming ourselves and our communities. And that's what I want to do. I want to save the communities. So if people, because you don't have the correct pedigree, or you don't, you talk with this upper Boston accent, I just don't see how that is doing us any good.
Okay. Jane Spitfire, I think she's watching from your end. She says, I watched those love shows, Golden Bachelor, Love at First Sight, 90 Day Fiance, Love Island. Yeah, this one was called Finding Love. Now, these are reality shows, but when I watched, some of this, a lot of that was contrived, but when I watched the show participants interacting and seeing how they were kind of weeding each other out, I had to say, wow, some of this does sound familiar. And these were all professional people, degreed people. And it's true that if you don't have the right look, if you don't have the right amount of confidence, we're going to get to that, standing on your square, whatever, the right amount of charisma, regardless of your academic credentials and your career and your title, you can be weeded out by a given person on both sides. So moving on, at the end of your Andrew Wilson, Coach Greg Adams live stream, you started giving men advice about standing on their square. And if I recall correctly, also making themselves as appealing as possible to the female gender, to women. being the best version of yourself, which itself is a flashpoint topic. Can you talk about what you meant by standing on your square and why that's important?
I did mean to go back and watch. I didn't get a chance to, but
Okay.
but what I would say about standing on the square is a lot of times, and you're right, that this is a, a problematic topic within our community. Is this talk about the educated lane? This talk about men who, are we doing too much in order to appease to women? And why can't I just be myself and all that? And certainly I am advocating for you to become the best version of yourself. But there is a certain segment of people that understand that in order to be the best version of yourself, sometimes you have to take a look at outside of yourself and develop attributes about yourself, right? Because you might have to work on your public speaking skills. You might have to, you fill in the blank about whatever it is. And so when it comes to dating and mating, right, there's this idea that you shouldn't have to do that. Well, this woman just has to take me as I am. Whenever you hear these ladies talk about, why they're dating the quote unquote pookies and ray rays or getting guys out of prison or whatever, it's because they're looking around and seeing a group of men who don't quote unquote stand on their square. These ladies will tell you that these guys are exciting, that they're show some level of masculinity, that they tell me what it is. And so I'm just advocating for men to do that. Stop accommodating women all the time. Stop, if the answer is no, it's no. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going here. I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that, and I'm going to mean what I say and say what I mean. That's what I'm advocating for men to do. And I was one of those men who was like, believed in a happy wife, happy life type of nonsense. No, I need to be happy too. No, you're not just going to get your way. If we're going to show leadership, if they're looking for some type of leadership, then I'm going to show that. I'm going to be, and that doesn't mean I'm going to be domineering, but I'm certainly going to be dominant. I'm going to speak my mind, and it's going to be this, and this is the way it's going to be. That's what I think that I meant in that particular segment. That's what I would say is standing on your square. I'm not telling you to be obnoxious. I'm not telling you to be mean. I'm not telling you to disregard her feelings or whatever she wants. You should certainly listen, hear, be empathetic, sympathetic, kind. But that doesn't mean you have to be a pushover. It doesn't mean you have to be to do whatever she says to do whenever she wants it to be done. Be a man, grow a pair, and move accordingly.
Where does excuse me? Where does that come from? Does that come from a father or an uncle? Is that natural? Is it a trial by fire?
That's a good question. I think it comes from all of those. I grew up having to look at other individuals around me and saying, I want this. My mother was and is an extremely meek person. So she would just kind of take things. And so when she took things, and as a kid, I'm like, you don't got to talk to you got to do that. I'd see her in the banks and again, I'm following around and managers telling her stuff and this, that, and the other. I'm like, why is this guy talking to you like that? But you're a kid, got to stay in the kid's place. But and so I took a lot of that, and then I became a police officer again, trying to still understand who I was in my fullness, and understanding that there were some corrections I need to make, and you have to make them in a way that is going to be helpful and beneficial to your surroundings. You shouldn't just lash out at people. You have to formulate how you're going to say things. You have to think about how you're going to say things. Acting within anger or emotionally is not going to get it done. So you can have mentors, fathers, stepfathers, uncles, pastors, good, strong male leaderships within your life to help you to formulate that. And some of it is going to be trial by fire. The guy that I am today at 52 is not the man that I was at 25. It's not the man that I was at 30. I've had to grow. I made mistakes. I've had to live with those mistakes, learn from those mistakes. I've had to build myself up. I've had to reinvent myself. I had to read books. I've had to look at mentors and say, okay, how'd they handle this? How'd they handle that? And it was and a lot of it was trial by fire, trial by error, making mistakes, learning, and just keep going. And that's a core message of mine, is to keep going. You're going to make mistakes. I made a ton of mistakes, still making them now. But particularly when I painted this room here. I'm really mad at myself about that. But you got to keep going. You got to keep going. So.
Yeah, everybody, that's a key theme of my book. I'll talk about this at the end. But the way you described your mother is how I would, to a degree, describe my mother as well. Now, when she's talking to me, my brother, she's not necessarily meek at times, but it's a hard thing sometimes to talk about, especially when your mom tried to do her best and try to give you everything she could give you. It's true. There are some things that your mother cannot teach you, and the world can be an unforgiving place. And once you leave, you're going to get scuffed up a little bit. You're gonna have to learn some nasty, whatever that is for you, and you're gonna have to learn how to stand on your square.
Mhm.
It's about competition. It's about it's not necessarily a forgiving place. The world has conditions. The dating market, it has conditions. So yeah, that's an important message. Salute to Jeff St. James from the Ask a Brother podcast. Salute, Jeff.
Salute, brother. Yeah, he's doing some good work there. I saw
Make,
BGS
yeah,
is
he's
here
here.
too.
Make
Yeah.
masculinity great again.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of Jeff's hats. It's a red hat. BGS says 131 watching from here. All right, so we are going to move on to, I'm sure, something. Oh, before we move on to the other doctor, Dr. C. Did you get a chance to look at any of the Scott Galloway stuff?
Yeah, I watched a couple of those. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so did you have any impressions on that? This male crisis, this male loneliness epidemic. One thing I didn't. He's kind of playing both sides respectfully. One of the things I didn't appreciate was him saying that men need relationships more than women need relationships. Okay, for me, that it seems like they're trying to light the fire under the male side more than the other side, the female side, which to me is disingenuous.
Yeah. I'm comfortable with saying that men and women really are better together. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm comfortable with saying that because, again, we can look at the data about, how, life expectancies, things along those lines. Now, the data doesn't support Black men marriage benefiting us, but that can be fixed where it can benefit us. And I have my own thoughts about why it's not. But I'm comfortable with saying that men and women really kind of belong together. But what we are facing is this modern era has hit the human race in a way that I don't think that we could ever have imagined. And women today are saying that they would rather not be partnered up. And men are saying, goes along with the Scott Galloway, my analysis of Scott Galloway is men are saying that the women that we're looking at are not the women of our grandmother's era. They don't have the same qualifications, their body counts are up, all this different type of things. And we don't want that. Now, Scott Galloway, yes, he does play both sides. He's trying to make his message more palatable to the ladies out there and saying, there's a problem with men. But ladies aren't going to listen to that. They're not going to listen to that. They're not going to want to hear that. They're going to say, it's your problem. You need to fix it. We're doing good. We got our educations. We're making more money than our cohort, particularly in our 20s, not so much in our 30s and 40s yet. But this is where we're at, and we're going to keep shining. The men are looking at that and saying, I don't want that. And if the men are going to say to themselves, I don't want that, what you have to offer, I'm not buying, then they're not going to buy it, and they're not going to try hard. They're going to work their 40 hours. They're going to rather than working 40, 50, 60 hours, They're going to take part-time jobs. They're not going to try to move up. You know, the cost of education is prohibitive. So there's a lot of different aspects that need to be fixed that Scott Galloway kind of dances around a little bit. Now, I give him credit for at least trying to touch on it. And again, this is the I would place this on the analysis of crashing out. You know, a lot of the men, in particular in Scott Galloway's case, or in the dominant case, is they just don't have the jobs, therefore they're not getting the women. That's always been the case among the Black community. And so, you know, they're just kind of seeing it for the first time, and they're having a struggle and a hard time dealing with it when their women are just quote unquote outpacing them. And it's interesting that Scott Galloway kept bringing that up. But when I did a little bit of research, not a whole lot, but when I did a little bit of research, you know, there's more people going to college versus the 1970s. So it's a disingenuous argument. There's still more men getting college degrees versus than there were in the 1970s. But for whatever reason, and we understand the reasons that the women are outpacing their men with their college degrees. Well, because there's more degrees to get. And as one YouTuber I was watching the other day said, you know, a lot of them are getting their degrees in lesbian dance theory. You know, how does that translating into modernity? Or how's that translating into the community, into the environment, into adding to society? A lot of times it's not. They're becoming entitled and aggravated by everything. So it's a huge problem, but which again is why I want to focus on Black men in particular. Now, can I focus on men in general? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm concerned about the plight of Black men and what we're going to do about Black men.
Yeah, I want to thank Leon Henny King for the $2 super chat. He says, came through to support the stream. I appreciate that. This is interesting. Jane Spitfire says, I guess this is a man. He says, Dr. L, my girl has a good job, makes more money than me, and went to Europe last summer alone. Okay.
I got a video coming out about, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. These ladies, I don't know, I'll probably record tomorrow. I don't know. But anyway, but these ladies, I think, again, we're seeing something that's a new phenomenon in human history. And that is women who don't have to get married and don't need a man's resources. And that is not going over well from what we can see today. And the ladies are saying, I don't want to be married. I don't want to think about being married. I don't want to have children. And if I can go to Europe alone, then I'm going to go to Europe alone. I don't need you to partner up. Now, that may be good for their own individual autonomy, but that is terrible for the community and terrible for the human race overall. But they don't seem to care about that. It's about them, their happiness, their underwater basket weaving degrees. It's about all that, and they just don't seem to be interested in all that. So they'd rather move. And to me, it just shows, man, did you ever really like men? Did you ever really want to be around men? Were you ever really interested in partnering up, or was it just a matter of survival? And again, as we talked about before, right? So now they're not partnering up. Is that going to lead to them crashing out later on when they're in their 30s and 40s?
Well, I'll tell you what. Oprah's legacy, the great Oprah, her legacy is now coming under question and scrutiny. She made a documentary talking about the increased number of gray divorces, and I didn't watch the documentary, but apparently there are ladies who are lamenting the fact that they took her words and her guests' words as the gospel, and they forsook having men and husbands, and now they regret being alone, older and alone with pets. No shade to anyone who's older and alone with pets, but the point is that that's the message in large part that Oprah was shepherding.
So they're regretting. I saw the thumbnail one day and I didn't click on it, so I didn't watch. I don't know. So they have listened to her, got their educations, got the great divorce, and now are regretting being in the great divorce stage. Is that what you're saying?
Well, number one, there's an increased number of gray divorces. So
Okay.
even ladies who were following the traditional model, till death do us part, in sickness and in health. Now apparently many older ladies are saying, I don't want to be married anymore. I want to, you know, uh, live my best life and be separate from this husband. But also there was another cohort that chose not to get married and uh, uh, just chose not to get married and do the single life. And apparently there are regrets, a lot of regrets about that now because they're alone.
Okay. So the ladies who never got them married are now regretting that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's inevitable. I think that's inevitable. All this running around, all this vacationing for 3 weeks and going to Bali and all this type of stuff may seem nice, but eventually you're going to turn 40 and 50, and you're going to want someone to be there to rub your back and to do whatever. And I just don't see any benefit to that. Again, this is an experiment that we're running in real time, and who knows how long it's going to be, how long it's going to last, and what the end result of that is going to be. This is brand new territory for all of us. And again, the more research that's coming in is saying that it's not going to work out well. It's not going to work out well.
Okay. Jane, I thank you for clearing this up. Jane says, I'm a female. My girl, okay. I'm a female. My girl is my daughter, and she went there 3 weeks alone. So once again, shout out to Better Love Movement. This is a thing now. I think a lot of the boomer generation, they look and say, well, why would you travel by yourself? Who are you going to Panama with? Who are you going to Europe with? Okay, a lot of the ladies are willing to travel alone. So this is a thing now, and they'd rather do this than settle down with someone, especially if he can't travel with them. So this is a real thing.
Yeah, I acknowledge it's a real thing, and fortunately, as we have acknowledged in this space, men have tamed the world. Right? There's no lions and tigers wherever you're going to be, presumably. It's a less dangerous world, particularly if you go to more touristy areas. So why not do that? I guess is their philosophy, but again, eventually it's going to come up one day that whether you're happy in your later years, but that's to be told, and that's to be said. So I don't. Again, this is a real time life experiment that we're running right now, and we're not going to know the answer to that. We're not going to know the answer to that. So,
Okay.
and again, she doesn't have to do it. She's got the money. Listen, she's probably got the money, education. I can live, quote unquote, like a man because the world is a safer place. All right.
BGS Ibmore says they are teaching younger men to view marriage differently. Yeah, apparently the Gen Z, there's a real polarization and fallout in Gen Z and those coming after them. The boys are trending more conservative. The girls are trending more liberal. So there's a real divide
Yeah.
there.
This economic freedom that the ladies have had, I don't know what it. Again, we've got to get to the answer to this. Is that these ladies, these Gen Z girls, are saying out loud in different polls and surveys, et cetera, that they do not want to have children. They are not considering a husband. They would rather go travel by themselves. They would rather live them life by themselves. They would rather have a couple of girlfriends. They have no issue with doing that.
Okay. I don't know. I think the super chat might be on your end. I see the link there. Do you see it? It's from. I mean, it's showing up here in the backstage. It's
I
not
do
showing up.
see it. Yes.
Channel.
Yeah. I do see it. Yeah. So you can't read it? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I can read it. Okay, so
Okay.
Gregory Scotland says, "Salute, gentlemen. Once Generation X Black men move out of the way, it is going to be different with Generation Z and Alpha men. Generation X were too nice."
I wonder. Oh well, again, these Gen Zs are, I think, 25 and under, I think, or so, something like that, 26, 20, 25 and under, something like that. So, and I hate thinking like this, but I don't know if this goes for all Black folks, because my kids talk about, marriage, and my daughter's really wanting to partner up with someone at least. So I don't know. This is still, incoming data that we're still getting to. So I don't know, how this is going to work out, or how large of a problem this is, because they may be feeling the effects that, as we mentioned before, that a lot of our Black women have already come to, is that there's not enough viable men. So I'm just gonna move accordingly. I'm just gonna do this. So now maybe that the dominant culture is coming to that same realization. But again, in the future, what does that mean? What does that mean concerning the influx and taking over of jobs by AI? What will your degree be worth? What are you going to do? We don't know. In the next 5 years, it's going to be really, really interesting, and that may turn everything around, or turn people back to one another, or may drive us further apart. We don't know.
Okay. Salute to Gold Professor. Thank you for the $5 super chat. He says money for the plate. All Aaron Clary, we're talking about the Black community and the broader society. Aaron Clary did not ask me to promote his book, but this is a really good book. Going back to Scott Galloway, the concern is what happens if men in general fall out of the economy, the marriage market, and just lay flat. I think that's what they're calling it in China, laying flat. This book does a really good job talking about what men and women contribute to the economy in our society. And it really makes you think about what the higher ups are seeing right now, and pondering right now if men decide to fall out of this thing altogether. So this is called A World Without Men. It's a very compelling read. Gregory Scotland with another one, I think. Yeah, this is the second one. I'm not going crazy here. He says, I am a boomer and I see it, even though I am from a different generation. All right, Dr. L.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that, Gregory Scotland. Appreciate that. Thank you.
We appreciate all the support. So all right, let's talk about Dr. Chiaku. All right, which there's a lot here. I don't want to revisit this to demonize Dr. Chiaku. So Dr. Chiaku, if you're watching this, hi. But there was a lot there. What stood out to me, other than your reaction, Dr. L, a lot of us applauded you for having the patience of a saint. I make a clown for this, but if I saw her out socially, for me, she would pop up on my attractiveness radar. I thought she was an attractive woman, but what stood out to me is that the mentality. You have to listen to what the other person is talking about in terms of worldview and values. Even if on paper they seem like they would be a good partner in terms of being equally educated and on your level, quote unquote. My dad is very, very big about finding someone on your level. She's on your level. She's on my level. Are they on your level? Why did you initially engage with Dr. Chiaku? Bigger media personalities like Tiffany Cross and Tyler Perry continuously spread this misinformation regarding degrees and which gender makes more. And you fortunately had the stats ready for your discussion with Dr. Chiaku. From your perspective, what is the danger of continuously spreading these myths and misinformation, particularly for the Black community?
I wanted to engage with Dr. Chiaku because she put out a TikTok concerning about Black women have been tricked. And as I went through a number of her other TikToks on her channel, there was all this underlying theme of being tricked and that Black men weren't whatever. So that's why I wanted to have her on to talk about it. And again, my hope was for her, just like, you did to me, you sent me some questions and, because I asked you, is there anything you want to talk about? So I do that with all my guests as well. If they ask me, I tell them I tend to shoot from the hip, but here's the main themes I want to talk about. And I told her, here's the main themes what I want to talk about. But I do tend to shoot from the hip. So we're having this conversation that everyone saw. And I was hoping that she would say, listen, here are the real numbers. Here are, and here's what I meant by this. And I was hoping that we could, again, come to this realization. And here's this gender war that we got going on. It's, and what you asked me the question before about, and why I have a lot of ladies on is because I want to understand their perspective and where can we meet at least in the middle at. Here's the way I'm looking at things. Tell me when I'm wrong. And Dr. Chiaku literally tripled down on what she said. She said it again on my show, these bad numbers, bad statistics, that they were incorrect. I tried to correct her. And then she did an audio podcast about the same thing. And then she did another, and then she did something else about it as well. And then I did another response to that. So again, there's unfortunately, there are some ladies out there who are just gone as far as what's going on within their, education doesn't mean anything. It's feelings over facts. And I take great umbrage with that, particularly as one who's supposed to have these credentials. And shout out to Anita. I see her in the chat there as well. And she just did a video fairly recently. I think it's on her members only, talking about you got to take caution about who you're taking information from. And I would place her, unfortunately, Dr. Chiaco, that is, in the category. You have to watch, what you're doing, who you allow into your circle, into your mind. You have to vet them, make sure that their education is what it is, they say that it is, and also vet the information that they give you. You put up books, right? We're telling you where we're getting your information from, and if people aren't willing to do that, if they're just shooting from the hip, then they're setting themselves up for failure. So that's why I wanted to have a conversation with Dr. Chiaco to try to come to a place where we can understand where each one of us was coming from, and really try to get together. Because again, I'm not about division. I want to see, why do you have this information, or why do you have these thoughts about Black men in particular? And okay, here are the numbers. There's a lot more of us that are available than you think. And if you stop being so atavistic, he's got to be so tall. He's got to have all these 3 6s or 4 6s or whatever they are. If you just expand your horizons about that, then maybe we could get together and form something that's special. And again, when they continue to demonize Black men, it paints us all in a bad light. What other community continues to dog their other half? We do it at an alarming rate, and I think that it needs to stop. And I wanted her to stop that. I don't want to continue with that. I love Black women. I want us to be the best versions of ourselves together. And as long as we are continuing to fight with one another and using bad data to do it, Dr. Chiaco should have been able to understand that this is not the correct data. This is not the correct information, and be willing to say, I was wrong, and I should have addressed this in a different way. And we could have had a great conversation.
Okay. I'm going to read Anita's comment here. She says, women are God designed to prioritize relationships, all caps. We are not designed to pursue stuff that doesn't fulfill us like it does men. Thank you for that, Miss Anita. You are on my wish list as an interviewee as well. I told Dr. L that before we started. Dr. L, before we started, I also gave the opinion, and I've said this on my channel before, that it seems that these degrees, this education, it means something different between the genders, the Black community in particular. And that's something that stood out to me about that discussion. And to make a long story short, it just seemed like a lot of us are not on the same team. We're not on the same team. These degrees, they're not being secured to bring up the group. They're being secured to bring up self and promote self and elevate self. And if you don't come up where I am, then then stay out of my face. You know.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it's unfortunate that it seems for many of us that the degree is that be all end all of what we are, the sum total of our being. And again, I talked a little bit about this when we talked about Chris Marsh, is that in her book, she actually, couldn't really define what it was to be in the middle class. Was it income? Was it that you had a PhD but you're making $40,000 a year? Was it that you're again in a high school dropout, but yet you started your own trucking company and make $250,000 a year? What does it mean to be in the middle class? So Chris Marsh couldn't answer that either, and so a lot of ladies are unfortunately, the Kevin Samuels clip that I still got to get for myself. I'm a PhD, right? So what does that mean to the furtherance of the community? And again, I would maintain that unless your degree or your job or whatever, your education is trying to somehow help the furtherance of the community at large, then what is it that you're really doing? And that's my perspective, and I'm going to hold to that. I think that we got to give back. I think the community has to give back, because other communities do that and they get the success, be it the Jewish people, be it the Asian people who get here, be it the Hispanics who come here from South America. They get here and family is first, and they will take care of their own first. And for some reason, we can understand the reasons, but the reasons are there that we just don't follow that same path or line of thinking. And I just think that is a grand mistake that we're making. It's a grand mistake.
Well, I think you just touched upon something. I think there's a disconnect there. I think the assumption is, okay, once I become a master's, I get my master's in something, I get my PhD in something, it's going to lead to a comfortable life. Okay. But if you're in academic circles, you know that all PhDs don't make good money. Some actually struggle. Some have a lot of debt. And so I think that there's a disconnect there from seeing that some truck drivers or some other blue collar tradesman makes 200K or more. So there's this, just having the degree equates to an air of superiority. And I agree. There are certain experiences you get when you go to college for 4 or more years that you don't get when you don't go to college. But for a lot of people, it's become a magic bullet and a bit of a championship belt, that you wear around. And I have a PhD. Or I have my
there's probably a lot of psychology around that, right? Yeah, it's that magic bullet. It's that thing. My grandmother, my aunt used to tell me, once you get that degree, no one ever can take it from you. And remember, as Black folks, right, we were excluded for so many different things, right, from these different job opportunities, from education. Our schools were run down, right? So to get this, and for us, it was seen as this way to get out of poverty, as you mentioned. That was the creme de la creme, right? You got an education, you can speak well, you can hold your head up because you can, your intellect was on the same par as everyone else. And as you just mentioned, right, in some aspects, it was a refining tool, because who is the creme de la creme? Who belongs in the mayor's ball? Who should be invited to different corporate functions and this, that, and the other, right? It was those with degrees, because they know how to hold their pinky up in certain circumstances, right? So all that I think it plays into all that. But now it's not, and this is where we get the term quiches from. We get this term quiche from this idea that these ladies, unfortunately, are going to school and not getting that refinement. And I think that, we can call them out if we want, but we've seen a lot of internet people with PhDs and degrees who lack refinement, who every other word out of their mouth is a swear. I mean, they're just as ghetto and hood rat, and take glory in it as those who don't have the education. So there's a refining tool that comes with it, that should come with it, that isn't coming with it. And therefore we get this phenomenon of quiches.
Well, okay. So everybody, for those who don't know, I'm thinking about probably my family here, if they're watching this, there's our Urban Dictionary, and there are terms. There are terms for some of these things, and Keisha is now the avatar for a hood chick. So, and there's a huge disconnect there, because when you meet somebody who's going to college, you would assume that there are certain refinements, and they're not hanging out in certain places, and they're not hanging out with certain people, they're not doing certain things. But that's not what we've been seeing. I'm thinking about that lawyer, I think it was in Atlanta, who got murdered by I can't remember the nature of the guy, but it was someone.
He was an ex-con or something, right? He was an
Someone
ex-con
you
or
wouldn't
something.
think that a lawyer
Yeah.
would be dealing with. So
Let me tell you, my time in law enforcement, I saw all that. I mean, I worked the midnight shift for a number of years, and I saw all the school principals, lawyers, people on the mayor's staff, catching them, and with people you would never think they would be around. So it may be surprising to other people, but I saw all the time, and it's really unfortunate. And so, yeah, so there is this underbelly and I'm talking about mostly with Black folks. I mean, I caught, some of the other races as well, but mostly with Black folks. So there's this reaching back, this love for the game, this love for the hood, this love for the ghetto that does not go away for whatever reason. So,
well, it should be obvious that when your station in life changes, ideally you shouldn't be associated with certain elements afterward, because you have something to protect. You have a reputation, you have a workplace. Now, none of us can completely get rid of our families, okay? But when you're choosing your friends and your significant others and the social circles you run in, you should also be thinking about, okay, who fits now and who doesn't fit? Who's gonna bring me down? Who's gonna help stabilize my life and put it into a better place? So, long story short, getting these degrees and this education, it's not necessarily translating into different friend circles, different life choices, and different outcomes in terms of overall life. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to read the super chats. Dr. L, I have two more questions. Thank you to Michael Ross for this $10 super sticker. Gregory Scotland, thank you for this $19.99 super chat. He says, Black men have had the problem of working together, and much of that has been our attitude of always involving Black women's input. We have tended to want their assessment, even how Black men should lead. Okay, we're going to get to that in one of the upcoming questions. Captain Obvious says, money for the plate. Appreciate that, Captain Obvious. And I think there was one more here. Minister Misty says, my offering for the plate. I appreciate that. And thank you everyone for your support. If you want to use one of the other methods, if you're so inclined, those are in the ticker. If you're a part of the replay gang, the super chat is also there. Okay, so that comment said something about asking for Black women's input. I apologize if anyone's interpreting misogyny off of this, but we're just having an honest dialogue here. There was a 3-person panel that you had recently, and that's the one I was looking for, and I saw the one with Troy and Trey. But the one woman got to talking about what a real man was, and that particularly chapped the BGS's hide and other men's, the concept of a real man. What's your opinion on the moniker of being a quote unquote real man when that's told to men? There's usually a purpose for saying that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I take the same thought process that when anytime anyone, in particular a lady, says, a real man would do X, or a real man would do, Y, it's really just a shaming tactic in order to get you back in line and tell you, how you should show up in the world, or what services you should perform in order to make, some woman's life much better. And if you're not doing that, then you're somehow lacking in your intestinal fortitude to perform in a certain manner. And so I take the same um, amount of disappointment in those types of statements. And again, this would go back to standing on your square. Now, this is what I stand for, and I don't have a problem doing what I need to do. But it's amazing to me that what is the definition of a real woman? What's a real woman supposed to do, right? Is a real woman's service or acts of service, should those always be in the to serve a man, in service of a man? Because that seems to be what they're always saying, right? A real man would put gas in a woman's car. A real man would do, fix a woman's toilet or whatever. So it's just manipulative tactics to get us to fall in line. So I don't take it very seriously.
Okay. I have an interesting comment here from Jen Will. I think she's a member from your side. She says, I think this goes back to the lawyer and academic achievement not necessarily translating to association with specific social classes. She says there are criminal elements in all levels. Jen, I agree, but there's a white collar crime, there's petty street crime, and if you're a lawyer, you probably want to be in there with the investment banker and the CEO, not on the street with Pookie.
Right, and that brings it. There was another comment that was kind of similar. I want to kind of put those together. Right, the degrees are a mask for. Was that man? Yeah, the degrees are a mask for people, right? So we're not using those refinement tools to get to where we need to be. And there was another question about where are these refined men at, or something like that, somewhere in there. Mayor Paradise, where can we find the refined class of Black folks? This is about, your circles and who you're around. I mean, like 2 months ago, I went to there's a politician running for office, and I was there at her cookout. Well, this is probably like a July, August or July. So I was there for her cookout, and there was nothing but refined Black folks there. So, I mean, it's about, where your circles are, and, changing your environment and finding these particular people. They should be at the church. They should be, in political parties. Those are definitely two places you should be able to find a higher or better class of people who have the educations or whatever you're looking for and all that, right? So again, if you're not taking advantage of this type of thing, and you're still running around with Pookie, when I would see you at 2:00 in the morning, if you're still running around with them, this is what you're going to get. And I think it's far too many ladies. The good guy, here's what's essential. The good guy that I try to harp on, the good guy is often invisible to these ladies because of his dress, because of his vernacular, because of his, pronouncing every word, because he tries to talk like Duke Ellington III, right? Because he's doing those types of things, he's invisible, right? But if you would broaden your horizons and understand that this person has something to give, then that would get us somewhere as a community. On the other side, again, I still talk to the men and say, loosen up a little bit. Loosen up a little bit. Understand that these qualities are not always what the ladies are standing for. And if you don't want to do that, then you want to do that. Okay, I don't have to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just saying, what are your results showing you? In particular, most of us Black men want Black women. Let me say that louder and more clearer for the people in the back. Most Black men want Black women, and that would include those from the refined class, upper class, or whatever. We still want them, but we are overlooked for many reasons. And if you would fix those reasons, if you could fix your dress, fix some things about you, or become more masculine, I don't see what the problem is with that. I'm not telling you to go out there and cosplay. I'm not telling you to go out there and get a bid, drive around with a gun in your truck, gun in your car. I'm not telling you to do any of that. But I am saying if they're looking for a certain type of masculinity that comes with standing on your square, if that comes from saying how it is, leading, protecting, and you're not showing those types of qualities, then you need to work on those types of qualities. That's my own. That's my only thing. I'm a police officer. I'm not going to tell you that. Well, I'm a former police officer. I'm not going to tell you to do anything criminal or illegal. But if you're not getting the women, if you walk into a place and the woman that you're looking at is not looking back at you, and you understand that she is looking for a certain type with someone with more confidence than what you're used to presenting, then take a look at yourself. That's my argument.
Okay. And I want to shout out BGS and Uncle Ron Wills for continuously breaking down the role social class plays in all of this, because it does play a role. I'm going to read two of Anita's comments here, and then we will move on to the final question and also the question of questions, where she said, it should signify a level up in class and socioeconomic status. Getting a higher degree for me simply means stable employment in my field. That's it. My family, parentheses, grandparents, were poor, and yet my grandparents and parents were the classiest people I know. High character doesn't need to mean high income or higher socioeconomic status. Thank you for that, Anita. All right, the question of questions. Dr. Ronald Neal got this one, and Jeff St. James got this one. Dr. L, you're familiar with Mr. George Fraser, yes?
I am, yes.
Okay, and his quest. All right, so I've covered Dr. George Fraser's Noble Quest here on my channel, and I posed this question to both Dr. Ronald Neal and Jeff St. James, who both gave very stark answers. It sounds like Dr. Fraser and others from that generation are steadily becoming more red-pilled now and coming to grips with what we're seeing on the ground. I think you eloquently described it as an experiment in real time. Dr. L, do you think the Black community, as we knew it in our youths, can be saved?
Yeah, I thought long and hard about this question. I think it can be. I think it can be. I think the approach that I'm trying to take is trying to have these dialogues and conversations amongst the more refined of us, the academics, the YouTubers, just trying to understand, why we are missing each other. I think that we don't understand and don't recognize, how dire this situation is with us. What I mean by that is that, no other community, again, who wants to date out, right? No other community talks about dating out the way that we do. I'm sure that they talk about it, just not the way that we do. No other community is wanting to accept us into their communities. Shoot, Black Americans are at war with Black folks from Africa and from the Caribbean. I mean, we got to figure all this out as a family. So I think that it can be fixed, but we got to figure out, what the problem is and how we go about fixing that. It's dire. We're in a bad place socially, economically, politically. And until we figure out, how we overcome that, and we've had a lot of different challenges along the way. We've had a lot of different impediments put there by the dominant class to make sure that we are as separated as we are, to make sure that we are not as financially and economically viable as other folks, and yet we're still here, still overcoming. So I would never say that it's over, that it's done, but it's going to take some real work. It's going to take the work of church folks, community centers, politically. It's going to take a lot of action. We're doing a lot of talking on the internet, on the YouTube. It's going to take a lot of action. And I tried to lead by example. That's why I talked about, simply coaching, mentoring, doing something, whatever your wheelhouse is, to make sure that the next generation is viable is essential and important. Reaching back and giving back. These kids are growing up and they don't understand a lot of the history that we have. And that's the fault of one, the education system, and two, our own faults. When I talked before about, the story I gave about the kids that I had to go there and tell them about, how to interact with the police. Someone who wrote in the chat that they didn't know about, the history about Trayvon Martin and others. These kids aren't thinking about that. They don't know that. I talk to kids right now. I'm teaching kids in one of the schools that I teach, and I talk to them about Trayvon Martin. I talk to them about Khalif Browder. I talk to them about other individuals, and they have no idea about that. And some of them are Black, and they have no idea. So, do we take time to sit down when there's a tragic shooting and talk to them about this or that? When there's a tragic arrest? Politically, do we sit down and talk to them about, voting patterns and all this? Do we sit down and talk to them about financial stability, financial intelligence? So this is part of the process about reclaiming who and what we were and are. And I for one would hate to see all the work that our ancestors did, all the lynchings, all the burnings, all the cities and towns that were burned down, all the problems that we have gone through, and to watch our community dissolve, not because of outside forces, but because we have succumbed internally to the white supremacist ideas and talking points and internalized racism and a refusal to look at our mates and say we can get along. I would hate to see that.
Okay. All right. That concludes my questions. I feel like I had one more thought, but well, that's okay. Dr. L, I'm about to use a feature with you I haven't done with any of the other guests. Everybody, let's give a round of applause for Dr. L. All this time that was there in my StreamYard studio, I never used it until today. So
I know they're always there with me too. I forget them too. Yeah.
Sir, I appreciate you coming and discussing your experiences and your expertises and your personal mission. And hopefully we can do this again. Do you have anything else you want to say during this offering?
This was great. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm always flattered when someone wants to talk to me. I certainly appreciate the activity in the chat. All my members or followers come on. Thank you so much. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you to your audience as well. Thank you to other streamers. BGS has been streaming on his channel as well. Thank you so much to all of you all. I think this message is important. I think what you're doing, Dr. Dunbar, is really, really important. And thank you so much for having these discussions. I think they're important. And it shows that there are some Black thinking men out there who are not just running the streets and running around with guns, but we are out here and we care about the community. We want to have some deep discussions. And I appreciate you doing this. And thank you again for thinking of me and having me. It's great company to be on with Dr. Neal, or the same platform as Dr. Neal and Jeff St. James. And to you as well, Dr. Dunbar, and Better Love Movement, who is here as well. So thank you to all of you all. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. If there's anything I can do to help out with what your mission is, don't hesitate to let me know.
Absolutely. I'd like to have you on, definitely, because you're in the STEM field, and I definitely want to have a conversation about how we get more Black men into that. So I definitely we'll set that up.
Okay.
Definitely.
There's one more final super chat here. Minister Misty, thank you for the $20 super sticker. Thank you.
I can go get some. I can go get some shakes this week. Y'all were really good. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm going to do some quick advertising here before I wrap up. This is my book, The Engineers of Western New York Basketball Story Part 1, Innocent Basketball Dreams. The holiday season is coming up, so consider getting a copy for yourself or for someone else you know, a young person, a young man in particular. A lot of the themes me and Dr. L talked about during the stream are in this book. It's not just a book about putting a ball through a hoop. For my YouTube subs, for those viewing, I'm selling the hardcover. I'm selling hardcover copies and paperback copies signed for $27 for the hardcover and $22 for the paperback. You can use one of those methods there in the ticker. Just make sure you send me your mailing address as well, so I will know where to send it. I also have an online store, the Big Words Author Store, that is here in case you want to use plastic. There, the hardcover is $35 and the paperback is $27. Those are the prices on Amazon. The ebook, hardcover, and paperback editions are available on Amazon. If you want a copy, I can discount the price. I can create a coupon code for you there on my store. You can get to the link in using the link in the description box. That link is to the page. There's a page there if you want to read about the book, but you can find the online store as well there. So with that, everyone, I'm dropping the link right there. Thank you for watching. If you are on the replay gang, please leave any comments you have there in the comments section. Thank you, Anita. Thank you for your comments. She says, excellent conversation tonight. And thank you for all of your hard work, Anita. I do watch you myself. Everybody, have a good night. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you all the next time. And if you're not familiar with them, check out Dr. L's platforms as well. Peace.